Hi, welcome to the PropWealth podcast, a series for property investors and landlords of all sizes. I'm Sam Murphy, independent financial advisor and mortgage expert.
And I'm Heather, landlord, portfolio holder and owner of a sales and lettings agency in Hove.
So today we're talking about, is now the time to expand my portfolio? So if you're a landlord who's been ambitious about growing their portfolio, but are currently thinking, not quite sure if this is the right time to do it, that's what we're talking about today. So Heather, you're at the coalface dealing with landlords all the time. What are you hearing from them about their growth ambitions at the moment?
There's different groups of landlords. So you've got the accidental landlords who very often have just fallen into it because of maybe they have inherited a property and they don't know what else to do with it. There's emotion involved there. Then you've got the more portfolio landlords who deliberately buy lots of other properties to get a regular rental income. Now, at the moment, there's a lot going on in the industry, and you may have heard about the Renters' Rights Act, which came in last month. And I think it's been too long coming that people are now thinking, it's terrible, what am I going to do? Because there's an awful lot of reliance on compliance legislation and everything else. So, landlords are really hesitating about what to do next, whether to keep their properties, whether to just see how the market goes. And actually, those landlords who've been managing their own, if they're not up to date with the compliance, that could cause a lot of issues for them.
Yeah, so you've picked on a few things there. Obviously, the Renters' Rights Act has been on the horizon for a long time and finally here. Do you think that's been a huge barrier to landlords that were previously ambitious about growing their stock? Or are the best landlords really on top of that and they're not deterred by the new legislation?
I think you get both, really. With all the number of households, there's about 4 million households in the private rented sector. And of course, a lot of those private homes are owned by accidental landlords. And there's a different sense of how you manage a rental. You need to come at it from a business perspective. And a lot of people just think, oh, wouldn't it be great if? They may not be thinking about long-term investment or how it would affect their pensions later on. Things like, capital gains tax, inheritance tax. So I think there's a little bit of everything in between as well. Every single landlord has a different set of circumstances.
Yeah, I think in my role, certainly with our mortgage clients, we see a lot of accidental landlords or opportunist landlords who they've got some equity in their property. They like the idea of having a buy-to-let, so they turn their current home into a rental property and then they buy their new family home and they upsize their process that we'd call let-to-buy rather than buy-to-let. And that's really taken a hit lately because I think foremost in people's mind is the extra stamp duty. So now the 5% surcharge on the onward purchase. So it's far worse doing a let to buy now because you pay the extra stamp duty on the big home rather than on the buy to let property itself. So that's making the sums quite hard to stack up for a lot of people. And I find in some cases you'd almost be better off selling the smaller property and buying it back again once the big purchase has gone through. So there's some real challenges, and obviously over the years, the government's new rules and legislation have been geared to really deter private landlords.
I think the problem was it all started with the tenant fees ban, and a lot of the things they could charge tenants for that was swept away. And now, of course, as you say, we've got the stamp duty, the fines for not looking at compliance deep enough to understand what it means. And the other issue, of course, from the 27th of December this year, councils have got massive powers to fine people. And some of those go up to £40,000. And I just think it's a little unfair on landlords. Sometimes it's a minor thing. It sounds minor, but it isn't, like things like not having a gas safety certificate and serving it. So landlords can get caught an awful lot. They've got a lot of responsibilities that to me seem a bit over the top sometimes.
Yeah, it's definitely not the time to have your head in the sand, is it? At
No.
the moment, there's so much on the horizon, and I think those smaller landlords, the accidental landlords, they're most likely to be caught out because, especially in recent years, with interest rates going up, I've seen more small landlords opt to self-manage. They've gone for tenant find only services from managing agents because they want to cut out that 10% or whatever it is from the managing agent.
And there's the danger.
Yeah, they don't realise
the
the scale of the obligations they've got now.
Yeah.
So you said a second ago about really you've got to approach it much more as a business now, and with the Renters' Rights Act, that's more than ever. The thing I've seen as well is that the gearing on portfolios, so the amount of lending people can have on a property, it doesn't make sense in a lot of cases now to have that quite so high. So we've seen landlords with highly geared portfolios where they might have borrowed 75 or 80% on each property and then improved it, remortgaged, bought another one. With increasing interest rates, that level of leverage is just quite difficult to turn a profit on. Are you seeing that with some of your landlord clients as well? Are they looking to right size their portfolio in a way?
Some of them are, but again, you get everything in between. People who just think, isn't it a marvellous way of saving for a pension, which of course it used to be 30 odd years ago. Rent out a property and you'll have a fantastic capital growth in your property. And of course, those landlords that started 20, 30 years ago, they've done very well. But then we're looking at capital gains, inheritance tax, all those sorts of issues. But I would say the starting point is to be realistic and literally have a sheet of paper in front of you and write down what your costs are, what the charges are going to be, make an estimate for what sort of maintenance you need. Some of the Brighton and Hove properties, for example, need lots of maintenance and repairs. And it all sounds a lot of fun to start with. Wouldn't it be great? We're going to get rental income every month. And then when sometimes the landlord sees his statement, minus because you've got to have a gas safety certificate, minus because you should have a PAT test if you can, minus EICR, minus there's lots of minuses on that on that form.
And it's so easy for it to creep into loss as well. You start off in profit and then little by little, the income tax changes come in, increased cost of repairs and maintenance, and a lot of landlords won't look at that until they do the tax return at the end of the year, and suddenly they've gone from turning a profit to making a loss. And then those inevitable incidents where you've got unexpected repairs or you've got a tenant that has an issue with paying the rent for a period of time, those really hit hard. I'm conscious we've sounded quite negative so far, and the question, of course, was, is now the time to expand your portfolio? And I think where I can see positives at the moment is this Renters' Rights Act has been on the horizon for a long time. It's now here. So we've got an understanding of how things are supposed to look like going forward. We know what the rules are. We know where the fines are. The tax position didn't change in the last budget for, it did for landlords, with property income being taxed at a slightly higher level again. So I take that back. But we now have a landscape that we can work with. And so I wonder if you are speaking to landlords who are still acquiring property, how are they doing it? Are they targeting specific types of property? Are they still going for the typical 2-bed terrace, things like that? What are you seeing? Or is it just not a conversation that's happening much anymore?
No, it is a conversation we're having. And in fact, I think those landlords that come to us who are intentionally investing in property approach the subject in a completely different way. So very often the majority of landlords in the PRS own one property. So the ones who have realised that actually if I buy 2, 3, 4, 5 and make it intentionally into a portfolio and carefully select where they're going to buy a property, who their target market is, how many void periods am I likely to get during a year's tenancy? Well, of course, all the ASTs are going with the Renters' Rights Act. So I think you've got every kind of landlord out there. There are some still who, a bit on a whim and a prayer, would think, oh, it's great because then we'll have a regular rental income. Others who really do approach it like a business. The ones who say, well, I need it as my pension pension every month. Unfortunately, they're the ones who can suffer when an unexpected bill comes in or something else happens.
Yeah, you're right. I think there's a lot of landlords that got very comfortable with lower interest rates and decided that was the landscape they were going to be working with for the foreseeable. But there is some hope on the horizon with interest rates. We've seen the base rates been coming down, market rates have been coming down. So we've still got landlords now coming off 5-year fixed at 1 point something or early 2 point something, and they're still looking at quite a big payment shock in a lot of cases. But the typical rates for mainstream buy-to-lets, non-complex portfolios, you're looking at around 4.5% to 5% without fees. You can get lower interest rates if you're prepared to suffer a big fee. And some landlords are quite happy to suffer a big fee because the fee can go on your tax return as an expense, so a fully expensed property expense rather than just getting the basic rate of income tax credit on the interest. So yeah, sometimes big fee, low rate works, and that does allow landlords to still gear a little bit higher than they otherwise might do. And I'm also seeing landlords take more interest in multi-unit blocks. So a block of 4 individual flats on a single freehold title. There's a lot more appetite for lenders in the market for that kind of thing now. Do you see people chasing those kind of self-contained blocks where they can manage everything under one roof and have multiple dwellings in there?
We have in the past. We haven't had any inquiries for that kind of investment at the moment. But from what you were saying, it's really important that landlords cash flow everything that they're going to be looking at over the next, perhaps, usually 15 years for a buy-to-let mortgage. Cash flow everything, put in whatever you think is going to happen or if you want to sell it. And also, I think it's really important that they're realistic. Actually, it's a good time when we're not building enough homes at the moment, so there's always going to be pressure to find a good property for tenants. And tenants don't generally move about, well, the ones we have, they don't move about as much as a lot of the problem with 6-month tenancies. Well, now it's going periodic from the 1st of May. And, this is something that may make tenants a little less confident in going in and saying, well, what if the landlord decides he doesn't want me anymore? Yeah.
So periodic means that there's no more
just
6
rolling.
or 12 months rolling.
Just rolling,
So
yes.
is that 1 month notice for the tenant, 2 from the landlord?
I'd have to double. It's 2 months, I believe, for the tenant. We're still going through all the information, and I think it's 4 months for the landlord. Okay. So if a tenant can give notice almost as soon as he's come in with 2 months' notice, a landlord's not going to know whether it's Christmas or Easter, actually. It's people coming and going all the time. And in between, of course, you would generally have a check-out, a check-in and inventories and everything else. That's really stocking the cost of everything.
Yeah, so flexibility at the expense of certainty on both sides.
Yes,
really.
It is. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, double-edged sword. The other thing that has been a real innovation over the last few years with mortgage lenders, which I think is worth landlords bearing in mind, landlords are quite rightly trying to find value in the properties they buy rather than paying full market value, either at a discount for whatever reason, or often because the property needs work. So there's a whole range of lenders now doing refurbishment buy-to-let mortgage products, where you can propose the purchase to the lender, say what your planned works are as well, whether they're structural or non-structural. So everything from just a kitchen and bathroom and a tart-up into side and rear extensions under permitted development rights. And the lender they'll cost that, and they'll work out what they think the property will increase to in value. So they'll build in an amount that they'll lend you once the works are complete without having to refinance to a new lender. So that innovation in the market, I think, is something for landlords to have some hope from, because it means that when they do see those properties with improvement value, they're not necessarily going to have as deep pockets as they might have thought they need to.
I think that's a great idea, to be honest, but with all the implications of the Renters' Rights Act, especially with the Decent Home Standard, if a lot of these properties are well below the C rate, then they're going to have to spend a lot of money already. And it's been estimated that landlords in some cases will have to spend up to £15,000
just to get up to
a C EPC rate. Yeah.
Yeah, and 2030 is that?
2030, yes,
yeah, okay.
yes.
So yeah, that's another big one on the horizon.
It is a big one.
lenders, again, they're trying to help landlords with that. You find some lenders offering discounted interest rates if the improvements the landlords are making are for energy efficiency reasons as well. A bit of a carrot before the stick comes in a few years' time, I think. Okay, so I'm conscious of time. We've already been going for 15 minutes. So really just to recap, in terms of portfolio expansion, we've seen a lot less from landlords of it, but there's still reasons to be optimistic. We've got a new landscape. Hopefully that will settle things down, and hopefully once we're used to that, we'll see some deep breaths being taken, and then the appetite come back.
Absolutely. For some landlords, this is a huge opportunity for them, and for others, it probably is the time to get out.
Great. And sorry, the one thing I forgot to mention, there are a lot of landlords selling, and if they've decided their time's up, then maybe that's someone else's opportunity to take it off their hands.
Absolutely.
Selling with a tenant in situ.
Yes.
So
Good.
Great. Well, that's all for this episode. So we'll be back soon with the next. Thanks for joining. If you've got any comments or any questions, do leave them in the comment section below, and we'll be happy to get back to you.